The SS Aurora drifted quietly in the black ocean of space. It was a small research vessel, only 50 meters long, with paint peeling on its outer hull and engines that rattled when pushed too hard. Most people in the galaxy had never even heard of the Aurora, and its crew preferred it that way. They were explorers, not soldiers. They liked quiet trips, long scans of distant planets, and slow, peaceful days without trouble. On this particular day, Captain Daniel Miller sat in his chair, on the bridge, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the endless stars on the front view screen. He was a tall man in his 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of calm face that didn't change much, whether he was in a peaceful orbit or dodging asteroid fields. His crew knew that if Miller ever looked worried, then things were truly bad. HFY. Bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of scanners and the hum of the life support system. Sofia Vega, the ship's young engineer, was leaning over her console, tapping at the display. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she had the focused look of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "Captain," she said suddenly, "you might want to see this." Miller glanced over without moving from his seat. "If it's another faulty reading from the long-range scanner, log it and move on. You know how that system acts up after a deep space jump?" Sofia shook her head. "It's not a fault. It's a signal." That got the captain's attention. He stood and walked over to her station. On her screen, a small green wave pulsed up and down. It repeated every few seconds, steady as a heartbeat. "What kind of signal?" Miller asked. "Not sure yet," Sofia replied. "It's repeating, but not in any human pattern. And it's old. Like, really old. The frequency isn't used by any modern system." From the back of the bridge, First Officer Harris, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, looked up from his reports. "Could be a beacon. Maybe a distress call from some lost ship." Sofia frowned. "If it's a distress call, it's been repeating for a long time. The signal is faint, but the source is big. Really big." Miller narrowed his eyes. "Location?" She adjusted the scanners and pointed to the star map that appeared in the air above the console. A faint red dot pulsed far from their current route, deep in an uncharted sector of space. "Here, about 6 hours from our position if we push the engines." Harris crossed his arms. "Uncharted sector? Could be pirates. Could be an old war mine still transmitting. Could be nothing." Sofia met his eyes. "Or it could be something worth finding." The captain studied the pulsing dot for a long moment. They weren't on a schedule. No one was expecting them anywhere. And deep in his bones, Miller felt the familiar itch of curiosity. He'd been in space long enough to know that most strange signals led to nothing. But the few that didn't were the stories worth telling. "Plot a course," he said finally. The Aurora's engines roared to life, vibrating the walls as the ship turned toward the signal. Stars stretched into long white lines as the jump drive engaged, pulling them into faster-than-light travel. The hum of the ship filled the silence as they traveled. In her quarters, Sofia kept her console open, watching the signal grow stronger and sharper. She had tried running it through translation software, but the computers couldn't recognize it. The patterns didn't match any known language, human or alien. It was almost like music, but with strange pauses and changes in tone that made her feel uneasy. Hours passed. The crew rotated shifts, but Sofia barely left her console. Something about the signal bothered her. Not in a frightening way, but in a way that kept her thinking. Finally, the ship slowed, stars snapping back into points of light. They had arrived in the sector. The signal was now loud and clear, and Sofia almost jumped out of her chair when her screen flashed a new reading. "Captain," she called, "you're going to want to see this." Miller appeared beside her in seconds. "It's not just a signal," Sofia said. "It's a—" She stopped, searching for the right word. Structure. Huge. Bigger than anything I've seen. And it's moving. The captain leaned over her shoulder, staring at the screen. The scanners showed a massive shadow ahead, its outline strange and uneven, like a floating city. No, not a city. Something larger, much larger. Visuals, Miller ordered. The front view screen flickered, and then the shadow appeared against the stars. It was impossible. A station, larger than the moon, floating silently in the darkness. Its surface was covered in towers and spires that glowed faintly with blue light. Massive docking arms stretched out like the legs of a spider, and between them, enormous. Gates pulsed with the same green light as the signal. Harris let out a low whistle. That's not human. Not in this century, Sophia agreed quietly. The captain's voice was calm, but there was a glint in his eyes. Bring us closer. Slow speed. Let's see who's home. As they approached, small lights flickered on the station's surface. At first, Miller thought they were more signal beacons, but then he realized they were ships. Dozens of sleek silver vessels rising from the station like hornets from a nest. They've seen us, Harris said, his voice steady but low. A sharp tone filled the bridge, followed by a burst of static over the comms. Then a voice spoke, deep, commanding, and completely alien. The words were harsh, filled with sounds no human throat could make. Translation systems? Miller asked. Sophia was already on it. Trying, it's adjusting. Okay, here. It comes. The alien voice shifted, the strange sound slowly changing into English, though the accent was still strange. Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted space. Power down your weapons and engines. Identify yourselves. The crew exchanged glances. None of them had ever heard of this place. This is Captain Daniel Miller of the human ship Aurora, the captain said, calmly. We're explorers. We followed a signal. A pause. Then the voice replied, You are trespassing in the territory of the Imperial Council. Remain where you are. Do not attempt to flee. Harris muttered, Imperial Council? Never heard of it. Me neither, Sophia said, her eyes wide as she stared at the approaching ships. But they look serious. The captain didn't look nervous. He simply sat back in his chair, studying the alien vessels as they closed in. Well, he said, quietly, almost to himself. Looks like we found something interesting. The alien ships surrounded them, their hulls smooth and dark, with strange glowing lines running across them like veins. They didn't fire, but their presence was enough to make the crew tense. Without another word, the Aurora was pulled toward the station, guided by the alien fleet. The massive gates ahead began to open, revealing a docking bay large enough to swallow their ship whole. Sophia glanced at Miller. Captain, are you worried? He gave her the same calm smile he always did. Sophia, I've seen worse. The Aurora slipped through the gates, and the darkness of the bay swallowed them. Somewhere deep in the station, ancient machinery rumbled to life, and the air was thick with the weight of 1,000 watching eyes. Whatever they had stumbled into, it was only the beginning. The Aurora drifted silently through the giant docking bay, guided by invisible tractor beams. The alien ships that had surrounded them now flew in perfect formation behind and above, their sleek shapes glinting under the strange blue light of the station's interior. The bay itself was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Massive enough to hold dozens of ships far larger than their own, with walls covered in moving patterns of light, like living circuitry. Captain Miller stood at the front of the bridge, eyes scanning every detail. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His crew could feel the same heavy tension in the air, the sense that they were being watched, studied, measured. As the Aurora came to a stop, mechanical arms extended from the docking platform. They latched onto the ship's hull with a low, metallic thud. A hiss followed, and the faint vibration of pressurization filled the air. Somewhere deep within the station, something was preparing to meet them. First Officer Harris leaned closer to the captain. "I've been in a lot of ports, sir. This doesn't feel like a welcome." Miller's eyes stayed on the view outside. "Then we'll treat it like an inspection. Keep calm. No sudden moves." On the side of the docking bay, massive windows looked into long corridors filled with beings of every imaginable shape and size. Tall, scaled figures with glimmering armor, short, hunched creatures with dozens of eyes, insect-like beings with translucent wings that twitched restlessly. They were all watching the humans arrive, their expressions unreadable, their whispers lost in the hum of the station. Sophia couldn't help staring. "There's so many of them. It's like a zoo, but we're the animals." One figure stepped forward from the crowd, tall, with 4 thin arms, each holding some kind of curved weapon. Its face was hidden behind a smooth, dark mask. It raised a hand, and the alien voice from before returned, now fully translated. "Humans, power down your ship. Prepare to disembark. You will be escorted to the council." Harris muttered under his breath. "Escorted? More like arrested." The captain gave him a sharp glance. "Not a word until we know where we stand." The docking platform beneath the Aurora shifted with a deep metallic groan. A ramp extended from the ship to the station floor. The airlock door slid open, and a wave of cool, unfamiliar air flowed inside. Sharp, metallic, with a faint, sweet scent that none of them could place. Miller stepped forward first, his boots clicking on the metal ramp. Harris followed, then Sophia, her eyes darting in every direction. The station's floor was smooth and dark, reflecting the glow of the overhead lights like polished stone. The masked alien from before stood waiting with a squad of guards. Each one wore armor that shimmered faintly, like it was made from liquid metal. Their weapons were sleek, curved, and humming softly with an energy the humans didn't recognize. "This way," the masked one said simply, turning to lead them. As they walked, Sophia glanced at the alien crowds pressed against the observation windows. None of them smiled. None of them waved. They simply stared as if trying to see through the human skin. The corridor opened into a vast central chamber, and the humans stopped in their tracks. Before them rose a skyline, inside the station. Towering buildings stretched high into the curved ceiling, each one glowing with its own color. Floating platforms drifted between them, carrying aliens to destinations unknown. In the center of it all was a single massive spire, its tip disappearing into a swirling halo of light. Sophia whispered, "It's like a whole city. In space." Harris nodded slowly. "If this is just the docking level, imagine the rest." The masked alien gestured toward a long, ornate bridge leading to the central spire. "The council is waiting. Do not stray from the path." Miller didn't answer. He simply started walking, his steps steady and unhurried, as if this were nothing more than a casual meeting. And yet, every alien eye followed them. From somewhere deep in the city, a low, distant sound began to echo. Not an alarm, but something older, ceremonial. Sophia shivered. Whatever it meant, they were about to find out. The bridge across the chamber felt longer than it looked. Every step echoed in the still air, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the station city. "Captain." Miller walked at the front, his eyes fixed on the towering spire ahead. Harris and Sophia followed close behind, the masked alien and its guards keeping a steady pace on either side. The humans tried not to stare too openly, but it was impossible to ignore the alien citizens standing along the raised walkways above. Some were tall and thin, draped in flowing fabrics that shimmered like water. Others were short, broad, and covered in heavy scales that glistened under the strange lighting. A few had features so alien it was hard to tell where their faces began or ended, if they even had faces at all, and yet none of them seemed curious, in a friendly way. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. They only watched. Sophia felt the weight of their eyes and leaned toward Harris. They're acting like we're dangerous. Harris kept his gaze forward. Or like we're something they've seen before, and not in a good way. The masked alien stopped suddenly at the base of a massive gate carved into the spire's lower wall. The surface of the gate shimmered with lines of blue light that moved like flowing rivers. Without touching it, the alien raised one hand and the gate dissolved into a clear opening. "Enter," the alien commanded. Inside, the walls curved smoothly, lined with columns of light that pulsed slowly, almost like breathing. The air was cooler here, carrying a faint vibration, as if the entire room was alive. Miller stepped in without hesitation. The guards followed close, their weapons held in a casual but ready grip. Sophia walked slower, her gaze darting over the alien architecture. Every surface seemed purposeful, every light placed in a pattern she couldn't understand. They were led into a chamber shaped like a circle. Around its edge, high platforms rose from the floor like petals of a giant flower, each one holding a different alien figure. Some were tall and elegant, others monstrous and hunched. There were at least 20 of them, each wearing distinct clothing and emblems. Sophia realized this wasn't a casual meeting at all. This was a council. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, speaking in the alien tongue before shifting into the awkward but understandable translation. "Humans of Earth, you stand before the Imperial Council. You have entered our space without permission." Miller's tone was steady. "We received a signal. We followed it." A low murmur rippled through the council members. Some leaned closer, others exchanged looks. The voice spoke again. "You will explain your presence here in full. You will submit your vessel for inspection, and until our investigation is complete, you will remain within the station." Sophia glanced at Miller, expecting him to push back. Instead, he gave a small nod. "Understood." The calmness in his voice seemed to unsettle the council. Several alien eyes narrowed. One leaned toward another and whispered in a tone too low for the humans to hear. From somewhere behind the council seats, a new figure entered, taller than the rest, draped in silver robes with a face hidden behind a smooth, dark visor. The chamber grew silent as it approached the central platform. The masked alien guard at Miller's side spoke quietly. "That is the Chancellor. You will address him with respect." The Chancellor's voice was quieter than the first speaker's, but there was a sharpness to it, like a blade under silk. "You are far from home, humans. Farther than you have ever been. Yet you stand here without fear. Why?" Miller's eyes met the dark visor. "Because we've seen worse." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. The council members exchanged looks, some confused, some alarmed, and then, without warning, the lights in the chamber turned red. An alarm blared, deep, slow, and ancient, and the Chancellor's head turned sharply toward the entrance. The masked guard hissed something in its own language, and more soldiers poured into the room. Sophia's heart pounded. This wasn't just a meeting anymore. Something was happening. Something big. The deep alarm echoed through the chamber, a slow, steady pulse that seemed to vibrate in the bones. Red light washed over the walls, turning the silver and blue of the council chamber into shades of blood. The alien guards moved instantly, forming a circle around the humans, their weapons raised but not yet firing. Captain Miller didn't move. His hand stayed at his sides, his expression calm, as if this was just another routine inspection. Harris shifted his weight slightly, ready for trouble, while Sophia's eyes darted from one alien face to another, trying to read their reactions. Tew. Chancellor's voice cut through the noise, sharp and cold. Humans, you will explain this. Two guards stepped forward, carrying a large holographic projector between them. They set it down in the center of the chamber, and a flickering image appeared. At first it was unclear, a swirl of static and light. Then it sharpened into the shape of a ship. It wasn't the Aurora. It was larger, darker, and shaped like a predator, all sharp edges and long curved wings. The hull bore no visible markings, but its design was nothing like any alien craft the humans had seen before. This vessel, the Chancellor said, entered our space 2 cycles ago. It destroyed one of our border stations and vanished. The crew were not recovered. The attackers left no survivors. The image shifted. Now it showed a grainy view of several figures moving through a smoke-filled corridor. Their shapes were difficult to see clearly, but they were roughly human-sized, moving with a soldier's discipline. They wore sealed armor, the Chancellor continued. We could not see their faces, but our records indicate their build, their movement, is consistent with your species. Sophia's mouth opened slightly. That's not us. A guard stepped forward quickly, its weapon rising. The Chancellor raised a hand, and the guard stopped, but the warning was clear. Miller's voice was steady. We've never seen that ship before, and if you think we're connected, you're mistaken. A ripple of low voices passed among the council members. Some looked unconvinced. Others seemed almost afraid. One of the taller counselors leaned forward. If you are not the ones responsible, then explain why a human vessel of ancient design is traveling in the void beyond our borders. And explain why you are here now, so soon after the attack. Miller didn't flinch. We're here because of your signal. You think we planned this? If we were here to attack, we wouldn't have walked into your council chamber unarmed. For a moment. Silence filled the room, except for the hum of the alarm. Then the Chancellor spoke again. Until this matter is resolved, you will be detained. Your ship will be impounded. Your crew will remain under guard. Harris took a half-step forward. With respect, Chancellor, we've done nothing wrong. But Miller lifted a hand, stopping him. His eyes never left the Chancellor's visor. Fine, he said. Do what you have to do. But remember, when you find out who's really behind this, you'll wish you treated us better. The Chancellor's head tilted slightly, as if considering the remark. Then he gave a short, sharp command in his own language. The guards closed in. Sophia's stomach tightened. They weren't being escorted anymore. They were being taken. The guards moved with silent precision, their armor gleaming under the red warning lights. Captain Miller, Harris, and Sophia were led out of the council chamber and into a wide corridor that curved upward like the inside of a giant shell. The walls were smooth and black, but every few steps, faint lines of gold light pulsed under the surface, as if the station itself had a heartbeat. They walked for several minutes without speaking. The guards kept their weapons low but ready, their masked faces giving nothing away. Sophia kept glancing sideways, trying to catch some hint of where they were being taken, but the corridors twisted so much she quickly lost her sense of direction. Finally, they reached a massive set of doors, far taller than any they had seen so far. Each one was carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift as they stared, like they were alive. Strange alien figures were depicted in the carvings, armies marching, fleets of ships, worlds burning and rebuilt. At the very center of the doors was a single image, a humanoid figure standing over a star. The guards halted. One stepped forward, pressed its hand to the center symbol, and the golden lines flared brightly. The doors slid open without a sound. The humans stepped inside. The room beyond was unlike anything they had seen in the station. It was vast, round, and open, the ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Massive columns of crystal rose from the floor, each one glowing softly in a different color. Between them hung banners made of some shimmering material that shifted hues with every movement. At the far end of the chamber, on a raised platform of black stone, stood a throne. It wasn't ornate in the human sense, no gold, no jewels, but it radiated power. Made of a single piece of dark metallic crystal, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And upon the throne sat the emperor. He was tall, even while seated, with long, lean limbs and scales that shimmered like liquid silver. His eyes were narrow and bright, a piercing yellow that seemed to see straight through them. His robes were simple but elegant, draped across his shoulders with the weight of authority. When he spoke, his voice was low but carried across the entire chamber without effort. "Humans," he said, the word rolling slowly from his mouth as if testing it. "It has been a very long time." Sophia frowned. "You know us?" The emperor tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Your kind walked these stars before my reign began. Before my people built the walls of this empire, you were not as you are now." Miller's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" The emperor rose from his throne, his height even more imposing when he stood. His movements were slow and deliberate, each step echoing across the chamber. "I am saying," he continued, "that your people have been here before, and when they came, they brought war." Sophia shook her head. "That's impossible. Humans only reached this far in recent years." The emperor raised one clawed hand, silencing her. "Your history is incomplete. Records fade, empires fall. But I have seen the images, the weapons, the destruction, and I have seen the faces." He stepped closer, and for the first time, they saw a flicker of something almost human in his expression. Not anger, but something closer to recognition. "You have returned," he said quietly. Miller didn't look away. Or maybe we never left. For a long moment, the two leaders stood in silence, the air between them heavy with something unspoken. Then the emperor's gaze hardened. "You will remain here until I decide your fate." The guards moved forward again, their weapons rising. But the emperor raised his hand. "Not in the cells," he commanded. "They will be guests." Sophia exchanged a glance with Harris. She wasn't sure if guest was any safer than prisoner. The emperor turned back toward his throne. "There is much to discuss. But first, you will see the truth." The crystal columns around the room brightened, and a holographic image began to form in the air, a fleet of ancient human warships, their dark shapes moving across the stars, and every single one was headed straight for the heart of the empire. The hologram above the crystal columns grew sharper until it looked almost real. The warships were massive, far larger than anything the humans had seen in their own time. Their hulls were black as the void, their shapes jagged and aggressive, with lines of crimson light running along their sides. They moved in perfect formation, silent and unstoppable, like a blade cutting through the stars. Sophia stared, her mouth slightly open. Those are human ships?" The emperor stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the image as if it were a memory burned into his mind. "They are," he said, "from a time before your history was rewritten." Harris frowned. "We'd know if humans had ships like that. We'd know if we had a fleet that could travel this far." The emperor turned his gaze to him, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Would you? How much of your history was lost in the dark ages of your world? How many records destroyed in your wars? How many truths buried so your people could start over?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "Even if that's true, why would they come here? Why would we attack your empire?" The Emperor's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "Because, when your kind first reached the stars, you did not come as explorers. You came as conquerors." The hologram shifted, showing images of burning cities on alien worlds, skies filled with human warships, and strange weapons that unleashed blinding waves of light. The alien defenders were crushed, their fleets scattered. Miller's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "And yet, here you stand, which means something happened to stop them." The Emperor's expression darkened. "Yes, the war ended, but not because your people were defeated. They simply vanished. One day the fleets were there, the next, gone. No message, no retreat, nothing." Harris raised an eyebrow. "And you think we know why?" The Emperor stepped closer, his silver-scaled face inches from Miller's. "I think you have returned to finish what they started." Miller's voice was steady. "Or maybe we're just here by accident. You said yourself we've been gone for thousands of years. If we were those same humans, you wouldn't be alive to tell the story." For a moment, the Emperor's eyes studied him, as if weighing the truth in his words. Then he turned away. "Perhaps, but whether you are the same as before or something new, the other factions will not care. To them, a human is a human, and they will want you destroyed." Sophia's stomach tightened. "Why show us all this if you don't trust us?" The Emperor's voice dropped lower. "Because if history is repeating, you will need to know what's coming." The hologram shifted again, not to the past, but to the present. This time, it showed a small, fast-moving fleet at the very edge of the Empire's space. They were human ships, but not the Aurora, and they were heading straight for Imperial territory. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the crystal columns. The new hologram floated between them, its sharp lines glowing against the dim chamber. The small human fleet moved like predators, cutting through the void with purpose. Their formation was tight, their course direct, heading straight toward the very heart of the Empire. Sophia's voice was barely above a whisper. "Those aren't ours. We've never seen them before." The Emperor didn't take his eyes off the hologram. "And yet, they are human." Captain Miller studied the image. The ships were different from the ancient war fleet they had just seen, but there was no mistaking the design. The same aggressive lines, the same armored hulls meant for battle. "Where did you find them?" Miller asked. The Emperor finally turned, his silver scales catching the light. "Scouts detected them at the edge of our borders. They did not respond to hails. They did not alter course. They will cross into Imperial space within a matter of days." Harris crossed his arms. "So, what does this have to do with us?" The Emperor stepped down from the platform, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. "The Council will demand your execution. They will use the sight of this fleet as proof of your intent. They will claim you are spies sent ahead to weaken our defenses." Sophia took a step forward. "We're not spies. We didn't even know this place existed until we picked up your signal." The Emperor's gaze was sharp. "I believe you. But my belief will not protect you. My enemies in the Council will push for your death, and the moment they succeed, the rest of your kind will be declared enemies of the Empire. This is why you must choose." Miller's eyes narrowed. "Choose what?" The Emperor's voice dropped lower, almost a growl. "Serve me. Work for me as envoys to this fleet. Discover who commands them and why they are here. In return, I will protect you from the Council and keep your ship intact." Harris let out a short breath. "And if we say no?" The Emperor's gaze didn't waver. "Then I will hand you over to the Council, and you will not leave this station alive." For a long moment, the three humans stood in silence. The offer was a lifeline, but it was also a chain. Accepting it would mean stepping deeper into a political game they didn't understand. Refusing it would mean certain death. Miller finally spoke. "If we do this, We do it our way. No. Orders we can't refuse, no missions that end in suicide. The Emperor's thin mouth curved in something that might have been a smile. Agreed. But understand this. Once you accept, there will be no turning back. Sophia glanced between them. Why us? You must have your own people for this. The Emperor's voice softened, though the weight of it remained. Because you are unknown here, and because you are human. If this fleet is truly yours, only you might reach them before they fire their first shot. The hologram flickered again, showing the fleet drawing closer to Imperial space. You have until tomorrow to decide, the Emperor said, turning away. But know this, the Council is already moving against you. As the guards led them, from the throne room, Sophia caught a whisper in the alien tongue between two sentries. It wasn't meant for her, but the translation chip caught it anyway. They don't know, one said. The war never ended. The heavy doors of the throne room closed behind them with a deep echo. The long corridor felt colder now, the alien guards keeping a step too close as they escorted the humans back toward their quarters. The air seemed heavier, the light dimmer, as if the station itself knew what had been said. Sophia glanced at Miller. Do you trust him? Miller kept his voice low. I don't trust anyone here. But the Emperor's right about one thing. The Council wants us dead. Harris grunted. Then maybe we shouldn't wait until tomorrow to decide. Before Miller could answer, the lead guard stopped. His hand went to the small device at his ear, listening to some unseen voice. His posture stiffened. Then, without a word, he turned down a side corridor. This isn't the way, Sophia said, slowing her steps. The guard glanced back, his reptilian eyes unreadable. New orders. You are to be taken for questioning. Miller stopped walking. The Emperor didn't order this. The guard's tone hardened. The Emperor is occupied. The guards' hands moved to their weapons. There was no mistaking it now. They weren't being escorted. They were being taken. Harris stepped forward, his voice sharp. If this is questioning, why the guns? The nearest guard hissed. Because you might not come back. In one smooth motion, Miller grabbed Harris by the arm and pulled him toward the opposite corridor. Run! The hallway erupted into shouts. Energy blasts tore through the air, scorching the metal walls. The humans ducked and weaved, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. They turned a corner and nearly collided with a group of smaller aliens, engineers by the look of them, who scattered in panic as the humans charged past. An alarm blared overhead, red lights flashing along the walls. This way, Sophia shouted, spotting a maintenance hatch slightly ajar. They dove inside, slamming it shut just as another energy bolt struck the wall where they had been. The narrow maintenance tunnel was dark and cramped, the smell of hot metal filling the air. They crawled quickly, hearing the guards' voices fade behind them. Miller's voice was grim. The Emperor wasn't lying. The Council's already making their move. If we don't choose fast, they'll make the choice for us. Sophia took a shaky breath. We still don't know if we can trust him. Harris gave a short, humorless laugh. Right now, I'll take maybe dangerous over definitely dead. They kept crawling until they reached a small service room. A single viewport showed the vast curve of the station outside, and beyond it, in the black of space, the small human fleet creeping closer. Sophia stared at it, her voice barely a whisper. If those ships fire, it's over. Miller's jaw tightened. Then we'd better get to them first. The small service room felt like a cage. Through the viewport, the unknown human fleet loomed closer, their silhouettes sharp against the stars. Miller could almost feel the tension in space itself, like a string pulled too tight. One wrong move, and it would snap. We need a ship, Miller said, turning from the glass. Harris frowned. We already have one, the Odyssey. Unless you've forgotten, it's locked in their docking bay under about 100 guns. Then we get past them, Miller replied. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "We can't stay here. If the Council reaches those ships first, they'll turn this into a war before we say a word." Sophia crossed her arms. "And if we go charging in, they might think we're the enemy and start shooting anyway." Miller gave her a sharp look. "Then we make them listen." They slipped back into the maintenance tunnels, moving fast but careful. The air hummed faintly, with the sound of power conduits. At every junction, they paused to listen. Guards' voices echoed in the distance, always moving, searching. Twice they had to stop as patrols passed overhead, the vibrations of boots shaking the thin metal floor. Finally, they reached a hatch that opened into the docking sector. Beyond the narrow window, the Odyssey sat in its berth, surrounded by force field barriers. Alien soldiers stood in pairs along the catwalks, their weapons ready. Harris muttered under his breath. "I count at least 30. We can't just run in there." Sophia pointed to a control booth on the far side. "If we disable the field from there, we might have a chance, but getting to it means crossing open ground." Miller scanned the area. "We'll need a distraction." Before they could form a plan, the station shook violently. Sirens wailed and the floor trembled under their feet. Through the viewport, they saw the cause. The human fleet had changed formation, spreading into a combat pattern. "They've seen us," Sophia whispered. The alien guards barked orders in their own language, some rushing to defensive positions, while others scrambled toward heavy gun emplacements. In the chaos, the humans made their move. They sprinted across the catwalk, weaving between crates and machinery. Harris shoved an alien aside and slammed the door to the control booth shut. Sophia's hands flew over the panel, her fingers tapping at the unfamiliar controls. Come on," she muttered. The hum of the force field barriers dropped suddenly, and the shimmering walls around the Odyssey vanished. "That's it!" Sophia shouted. "Then move!" Miller yelled. They ran toward their ship, blaster fire cracking past their heads. Harris hit the ramp controls, and the Odyssey's hatch hissed open. They dove inside, sealing it shut just as more guards reached the docking bay. Miller slid into the pilot's chair, powering up the engines. "Hold on. This is going to be rough." As the Odyssey roared to life, the docking clamps disengaged and the ship lifted free. Outside, the human fleet and the Imperial defenses stared each other down, both ready to fire. Miller pushed the throttle. "Let's hope they're in the mood to talk." The Odyssey shot forward, straight into the space between the two forces. The Odyssey burst into open space, sliding between the human fleet and the Empire's warships. On one side, sleek Imperial cruisers floated in tight formation, their weapons glowing with deadly light. On the other, the human ships, blocky, powerful, and bristling with cannons, held their line, ready to strike. Inside the cockpit, the air was thick with tension. Miller's hands gripped the controls while Sophia worked the comms. "I'm trying to open a channel," she said. "But both sides are broadcasting battle codes. They're seconds from firing." Harris leaned over her shoulder. "Make them hear us. Scream if you have to." Through the viewport, the distance between the fleets seemed to shrink. Miller could almost feel the crosshairs from both sides locked on their ship. One wrong move, and the Odyssey would be vapor. Finally, the comm crackled, and a stern voice filled the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel, you are in a restricted combat zone. Withdraw immediately." "This is Captain Miller of the Odyssey," he said firmly. "We are human, and we have information that will stop this fight before it starts." There was a pause. Then another voice, colder and alien, cut in. "Captain Miller, you are interfering with Imperial security. Leave now or be destroyed. 2 fleets, 2 ultimatums." "No time." Sophia spoke quickly into the mic. "Listen to us. This isn't what you think. You're being manipulated by the Imperial Council. They want war, and they're using both of you to start it." The human commander's voice returned, sharp. "Proof?" Harris jumped in. "We have it. Direct orders from the Council to eliminate us before we reached you. They fear humans because we've survived worse than they can imagine." Silence followed. Miller watched as the targeting lights on the human fleet flickered, some ships lowering their weapons slightly. But the Empire wasn't standing down. On the comm, the alien voice hissed, "Enough! Destroy them!" At that moment, the Odysseys. Sensors screamed, missile locks from the Imperial side. Miller shoved the throttle, twisting the ship in a hard dive. Energy blasts streaked past, narrowly missing them. The human fleet reacted instantly. Their guns roared to life, not at the Odyssey, but at the Imperial warships. The battle had begun. "No!" Miller shouted. He slammed the comm button again. "Stop firing! This isn't their whole empire, it's just the Council!" But the fight was spreading fast, the black void flashing with explosions. Ships twisted and spun in deadly arcs. The Odyssey danced through the chaos, avoiding fire from both sides. Then, over the comm, the human commander's voice returned, quieter this time, almost calculating. "Captain Miller, if what you say is true, then we don't need to destroy them. We need to cut out the rot." The human fleet shifted formation, targeting only the Council's flagships. Imperial ships loyal to the Emperor began breaking ranks, turning their guns on the traitors. Within minutes, the battlefield had transformed. The Council's forces, outnumbered and caught off guard, began to retreat. When the last enemy ship jumped to warp, silence fell over space. Miller let out a slow breath. "It's over." Sophia shook her head. "No, this was just the first move. Now the whole galaxy knows humans are here." Harris smirked. "Good. Let them know. Let them wonder what else we've survived." As the Odyssey drifted between the two massive fleets, the stars ahead seemed endless and full of trouble yet to come.